if you've ever wondered why some brands feel plugged into entire industries while others are just running ads, the answer is ecosystem strategy. I'll give you an example. Take Microsoft Azure. They didn't just market cloud services, they actually developed a whole ecosystem of startups, developers, and corporates that made Azure part of how the industries work. I'm Rachita Sharma from FTA Global, and you're watching the Brand Perspective series at Marketing Stack 2025. And today on the mic, we have Nitika Goel, who's the Chief Strategy and Marketing Officer at Zinnov. Nikita, she's been at the center of building ecosystems with Fortune 500 companies, high growth startups, and policy makers. So today we are going to take a deep dive into why this ecosystem strategy can be a real growth engine. Nitika, welcome to the podcast. I'm really excited to have this conversation with you. How are you feeling?
Thank you for having me. Very, very excited. Marketing is something I learned and grew into because I was a management consultant in Zinnov and then came into a marketing role. So it was a combination of things that put me into the center of where I am. So to be on a podcast on marketing is a very exciting place for me. Thank you for having me.
Great, thank you. So we will start from from the basics first. Ecosystem strategy is not something us marketers are very used to hearing it, right? When a brand shifts its mindset from ecosystem thinking, from campaign thinking to ecosystem thinking, what specifically changes in a way that they go to the market and they engage with the customers?
That's a great question, Rachita. So if you really think about conventional marketing or B2B marketing, it follows a fairly standard script, right? You're shepherding people through an awareness, interest, decision making, and funnel. Whereas in an ecosystem play, it completely flips the script. What I mean here is you are no longer shepherding, but you're actually hosting them. So you have different points of views, different narratives, and you have to be able to allow for that co-creation with your own brand voice being able to stand clearly through. So I think that is where the fundamental shift lies.
Right. And if in that sense, then how do you like draw that sharp line in terms of that convergence that's happening from campaign thinking to ecosystem thinking? How does it start?
So honestly, I think the first thing is when we go into a campaign thinking model, we think of ROI. It's all about what is the business metrics, how much demand generation is coming through it. In ecosystem thinking, it is really about patient capital. If I have to draw a parallel there again, it is not about instant gratification. You are not going to get a lead tomorrow. You are not going to have a decision maker say that I trust brand Zinnov the day they connect with your brand, right? The biggest thing that one as a marketer needs to understand with that is that good things come to those that wait. And when they come with a multiplier effect. And that is what an ecosystem thinking does. But does that mean that you don't do demand gen? It's not an either or scenario. But in today's day and age, with the likes of Chat GPT and AI coming in, your content is very easily replicable. Today, you have something put out, you will have a competitor copy it in less than 24 hours by running it through a GPT, right? But the point, what does create a defensible moat is a feeling you leave a person with, an emotion that you evoke, something that a person has, an association that they have with you, which is not a point in time, but it is built over a period, and that cannot be disrupted. So if you think of it, that is where that line gets drawn. So you understand there's a systems play, and then you understand there's a long play. This is the long game.
This is a long agreed to that. Any specific example if you can share, when that ecosystem orchestration has delivered also results, because you mentioned it's not a short-term play. You cannot expect.
So I'll tell you, I think I'm not sure if you know, but I've been with Zinnov for 17 years, right? And like I said, when I first started in this organization, there was no marketing as a function. So advertently, inadvertently, I landed with a job of building an ecosystem. We have a very unique platform, which we call the GCC platform. For those who don't know, GCCs are global capability centers. If you open a paper, it's probably every second word you'll hear GCC. It's in a current hype cycle, so that's what we're currently a part of. But we've been in that journey for the last 23 years. When we started, we wanted to create this platform thinking where we brought together different leaders in the ecosystem to be able to come share ideas, share their perspectives. So these were leaders which were across industries. We were working with the likes of an industry body like NASSCOM. So just to give you a little context, Zinnov used to track GCCs. We had a proprietary database, but we didn't hold that database. We gave it to NASSCOM because we realized that it is important for everybody to know the number. Today, it has a very collective voice, this ecosystem, but back then it did not, right? And what did happen over that period of time is we were able to firmly entrench ourselves. And today we are obviously reaping the benefits. So if you mention GCCs, Zinnov is synonymous with it almost with everything. The things that we did with NASSCOM, we've been publishing a report with them for the last 10 years. The governments use our data, right? The ecosystem. Back then, I'm pretty sure the government wasn't thinking about a GCC. They were thinking about IT services. But today, when it comes into play, you have global CEOs using our data. You have governments using our data. You have every industry agency using our information and knowledge. You have people who are a part of our ecosystem who've become our advocates. And that is what the long game is about.
Right, agree. And I think we were just speaking about NASSCOM. I worked for the brand for 8 years. And
I'm a big fan.
Same. I mean, we were doing the marketing for them, and the kind of reports and the kind of community forums they had, the kind of evolved conversations that's having, like when we were working, they were building the product system, and now they pivoted towards the deep tech ecosystem. So I think a lot of stakeholders got involved. So for that, I would like to ask you the next question. So when you're aligning players, like, you're talking to the startups, you're talking to the policymakers, the corporates, investors, regulators, right? How do you actually establish the trust that make those network work?
Got it. So I think there has to be 2-3 things that you look at it, right? One, I think a mistake one would do, like, or a business will do, is try to pick a network where they have no resonance with. It's like today, it has to have some business alignment, because the fundamental thing to make a network work or an ecosystem work is to resource it. If somebody thinks that you can create an ecosystem with an and or job, like do demand gen and build an ecosystem, it is not an and job, right? It takes a different kind of muscle, a learning, a belief. And also a very fundamental premise in an ecosystem is something my CEO taught me when I was really young, right? You have to give without any expectation of anything in return. And that means a lot of humble pie. It means putting your ego aside. It means being the ability to not feel taken for granted. And that is a lot, right? And you need somebody who has that muscle and capability to do that. So first, I would say, as part of that ecosystem that you talked about, is an internal ecosystem that will help you build an ecosystem. You need a certain kind of person to be an ecosystem orchestrator. Not everybody can do it. The second thing that you need to do is figure out where there is strategic alignment to your business, because you need to have advocates within your business to support you in a time, because you're doing the long run. Like anything, if it's not working immediately, all of you are marketers, you will know. If the campaign doesn't yield results, you either kill it or you keep it going, right? But in this case, the results are not going to be seen. They're hidden results, and it sort of unravels itself over a period of time. In this case, you need to have people who believe in the long run as well. So building a team of internal or ecosystem of internal advocates. The third thing that one needs to do is see where it aligns with the business, so you can build a short-term win. So for example, you may want to create a smaller podcast series with a series of leaders that you want to work with, right? Or not work with, but at least get to know, or you believe are ecosystem multipliers. What I mean by an ecosystem multiplier is, when you pick a network, you can't treat all sub networks as equal. You have to understand that one network will yield more value. So if I have to give you an example, I may choose to work with a network of investors, because these investors will know startups, they will know government and policymakers, and they will know corporates. So I may start with an ecosystem of investors so that they create that multiplier or network effect. Two, the investors should also understand that I have something of value to offer them. So there has to be some sort of business alignment, right? And number three, it has to be a place where I have the right to win. So today, if Zinnov goes to an investor with zero background in anything to do with capital markets, they may not be interested in what I have to say at all. So understanding that sweet spot of the two or three things is where I think is the critical angle of building a network and building it right. And understanding that not all sides of the network have to be built concurrently. You pick one, you seed it, allow that network effect to take place, then continually add people to the network so that the value multiplying effect keeps taking place.
So would that be your right, KPI that you'll be tracking in terms of, say, how do you identify a certain ecosystem it's working? How would you identify that?
So obviously, at the end of the day, it is a little bit about business. So if it is a business network, it would be how many people are advocates for the brand, how many people are refers to the brand. I would look at my breadth of network. I would look at the depth of my network. I would look at the advocacy ratios in my network. I would also look at the multiplier effect of that network. So for example, I'll give you in the Zinnov context as well. Like I said, we initially started with corporates. Over a period of time, we started working with industry bodies. And when the whole ecosystem has hit a certain critical mass, we are today actively working with governments, both at a state level and the center level, right? All influencing policy in the space that we have the right to win. So we are at the national GCC framework policy. We work very closely with the government of Karnataka. We work closely with Telangana. We work with the Tamil Nadu government, Maharashtra government, and whatever have you. So it's that combination that really makes all of this possible.
And do you think there's a tipping point, like ecosystems evolve over time, right? Is there a moment where you sort of step back and let it evolve on its own? Or does it require like a continuous effort to keep on building? Like, for example, NASSCOM, of course, it started like, I think, more than 25 years back, right? It started as a small community, and now it has become like the major, growth institution of the country, right? And even globally, right? So is there a tipping point that you would see?
So I think a very interesting question, right? I think I was just talking to one of my colleagues and I was saying sometimes an ecosystem is like a river. You cannot train a river, right? It has to have its own flow. You can build a dam, you can put certain things in the place. I think at the end of the day, we're still just doing the beautification on the riverbeds. The ecosystem will flow on its own. There is certain things that may come in, there will be blocks, and it'll have an evolution. I think if we're too prescriptive about an ecosystem, that also has its own set of problems. However, that being said, if you have to be a trust node, you have to be consistent, because a fundamental fact is out of sight, out of mind, right? And if you do not continue to give into that network, so that's what we keep saying, right? We're not networking, we're net giving. That's how we think of all our ecosystem plays. So if you are not a net giver and you're a passive consumer at all points in time, it's not that the network won't continue, but you will be forgotten. And as a brand, if you need to be and at least have a voice, you need to continue to give. And I think that's the model that one needs to fundamentally think through.
I think that's a really beautiful example that you give about the ecosystem is like a river, it needs to flow, but of course there's consistency that's needed. That brings me to the fact of choices and challenges, right? In the ecosystem, of course, you're building it, you cannot engage with everyone at once, right? How do you decide what matters the most? What is it something that you can maybe deprioritize, and what you should focus on first? And I'm sure it has a scalability, I'm sure it has like a phase wise approach to talk to put it into a layman's language. But if you can't engage everyone at once, how do you?
But the question I'll even ask, why do you need to engage everyone at once? Because you're a part of a network, you do not have to know every style of dance. You just have to do what you're doing, right? So, because you're a part of a network, you see, like I said, where do you have the right to win? What can you add most significantly so that people understand the value that you're playing, right? And I think at that point, you pick one or two that you think, and there's an ebb and a flow. Nothing is consistent. Like today, like 5 years ago, we did not have the governments as involved. Today, we have governments much more actively involved in policy regarding what is happening within a GCC or investments or startups and things like that. So when they come to the fore, you dance that dance. But when they don't, you dance with whoever's willing to dance, right? And that's who's willing to take center stage. And I think the beauty is knowing when to pair back and when to also step forward. And you don't have to be the most central part of that network at all points. Sometimes it's allowing it to grow, because otherwise there's also a challenge of a network, right? When you start, and I think one of the things you have to do is letting go of control. I think even in demand gen, there's a lot of control, right? When you're thinking about it, a network is a complete antithesis of that. It's letting go of control. And when you let go of control, it means allowing for things to organically take shape. And when it organically takes shape, you have to say that this is the point, I will not intervene. Knowing when not to intervene is as important as knowing when to intervene.
Agree. Now I'll talk about for the leaders who are moving into this space, right? What do you think? Because you've been, there at the foundational level, you were a part of the system. What are some of those habits and assumptions they have to let go of when they want to truly become those ecosystem architects?
Ah, one, I think that's a really interesting question. Like I said, number one, ego has to be left at the door. Number two, the ability to control everything has to be left at the door. And number three, understanding that it is a lot of consistency and effort with zero return in the near term. And that is something that can be battering emotionally. And I'll give you an example, right? Zinnov started something called Confluence 18 years ago. So it was a gathering. It went through many names and R&D, Globalization Council, and everything else, and whatever have you. When we started putting it together, we put together a community which had exactly 100 people in the room, 30 people of whom was Zinnov people. So like do the math, right? And the ambition for us as that network was to put together a group of, we said 5,000 or 10,000 people who will come together and be the voice of the community. Now, what happened is, one of the fundamental things is belief. Like you have to say you're going from 70 and you're saying in the next 5 years, I'm going to go to 10,000. It seems like a very big leap of faith. Either I was very happy, completely delusional, or just very ambitious. You can say whatever you want to. But that's the thing that you sort of grapple with, right? But what that meant was stopping limiting beliefs of self. When I say self, of the organization itself. Second was trying to orchestrate it in a particular way. Like I will have exactly 10,000 people of this profile, of this particular background with this maturity, because I can't control those variables of where the ecosystem will lie. Right? I will have 10% governments, 30% global leaders, 60%. You cannot put together that mix. It is not a marketing mix that you put together. Then after that, you come to the place that, so like I said, putting together control. The next time is sometimes you knock on doors and you think, okay, this is who I want to have as a part of my network. And they're like, who are you? Like, why should I spend the time with you? So that is the next thing. But every one of those knocks is a learning moment. You realize what is missing. And as an ecosystem orchestrator, that is where you then start realizing that, okay, I have to do it. Number three is when you give so much and you have zero things in return. I think fundamentally as human beings, they're not that altruistic. You will say, kuch to milna hai. I need something. Like, you cannot just slam the door in my face and then next day I come back and say, hi, here I am again. So I think that is what you need to just keep going through. And number 4, resourcing. At some point, asking for resources is very, very important. No person who is an ecosystem creator can be a superman, woman, or anything in between, right? So it is something that you need to ask for, and I think that's where it comes to.
Great. Now, from the orchestrating perspective, it's blurring all the boundaries, right? You're talking to the competitors, you're talking to the regulators, right? You have to bring everyone in the room, right? Now, who decides who will sit on which side of the table?
So some of it happens very organically, right? And like I said, if you're trying to control it, then you decide. It's as simple as that. Like, there are times, for example, if you look at some of the companies that we work with, like you very rightly said, now services and GCCs are competing. We serve the services in one line of business, we have GCCs in the other line of business, but we've allowed it to just take its own shape. It's, again, because at the end of the day, we don't know where it's going to land. Like, a presumption here is we think of a conflict situation in an absolute term. So if you think that services and GCCs will all, but they were not in conflict. They were very complementary a few cycles ago. In this hype cycle today, they may seem they're at a point in conflict. At some point when GCCs have enough work, will they go back to saying that all context work will be given to services companies? So a very important part about an ecosystem is not trying to bet the direction it's going to take. Right? It is allowing certain things to happen and allowing that window for it to take place so that you will know where to pitch your tent when the time is right.
Right.
It's also a waiting game.
Interesting perspective. Yeah. I mean, a lot of things are, you'll have to wait how they shape up. Right. We'll now move towards the future lens. What's next, right? With all these AI and global, platforms, they're creating this borderless influence. So, how do ecosystems now transcend?
I think ecosystems will be the only way to transcend, because AI, like I was mentioning earlier, right? There'll be a lot of automation that takes place. And with that automation, we're also dehumanizing ourselves in a certain way. It is so important for ecosystems to retain, for us to continue to be humans, not in the loop, but to really retain our humanity. So I'll give you an interesting thing we're doing, right? In Zinnov, I'm a part of something called the Zinnov Foundation. This started because we felt at some point there's going to be such a tech overlay that we will not have physical places where people can just meet from different stratas of society, different states of being. They can just meet and talk about something which is net neutral. And we are trying to replicate that and create public spaces and open spaces where people can create conversation so that there is meaningful dialogue and our humanity component retains. Right. And that is something we're doing very intentionally. And I think, some organizations, I'd say Zinnov is one of those unique organizations, and more our CEO, who's very ecosystem first, not because of what it is today, but he's always been like that. So if you see all our activities, whether we do Confluence, whether we do our GCC platforms, Foundation, our thing is, if you think of New York as a city, right, you will see art in public spaces. You will see, tech companies as well as artists coincide and collaborate, not collaborate. They share a space. And with that, creativity is taken through the roof, right? You will have thoroughfares in New York, which are just meant in buildings that are beautifully designed. You will have a place where there's an art pop-up. And that's where we say that continuous creativity is built when ecosystems are built. Because today, when I have a conversation with you, I learn two things. It is not something I have prompted. I have not passively consumed. So in fact, my colleague Soumya and I were just discussing when we were in the car is like, how do you consume content? Interestingly, all of us in a world of hyper personalization have so much cognitive bias in the way we consume is all the algorithms are pushing just what we want to see, but there's so much happening in the world apart from that, right? So one of these little conversations, one nugget of wisdom gives you another complete stream of thinking that you would not have. You'll have dots to connect. You don't have technology connecting the dots for you. You have human interaction building new dots so that you can make those connections.
Really interesting. I think it made me think about how my algorithm is right now and how what all am I missing right now. Now, for the CMOs, the strategists who have been used to, running as per the campaign-driven models, and now they want to pivot towards an ecosystem strategy thinking, how should they start? How should they begin that process?
So I think CMOs need to rethink what their titles mean. It's no longer chief marketing officer. I think it'll be chief market maker officer. So if you think of it in like an ecosystem lens, right, you will be scripting a lot of what the ecosystem, because of the ecosystem, you're a voyeur, but you're a participant as well. So you're writing the script alongside with directing some of the conversation. So when you are playing that multifaceted role, you are literally shaping as to where the markets can go, who could be an influence node, who can be something else. So I think from a new age CMO has to also strip back the ROI thinking in every single thing that they do, right? The moment you start treating an ecosystem as a transaction, they are trust-based networks. The moment you start thinking of it as a transaction, they will start thinking of you as a transaction. And that reciprocity comes very quickly. So I think so first things that they have to do is understand it's a long game. Number two is understand that they are scripting that journey. So they have to build it with the angle of trust. The trust networks are the biggest networks. I have people who I have met 15 years ago who are still people I can pick up the call and just have a quick conversation or request a favor, or even vice versa. They will reach out to me for a favor, right? So I think that is something which belies trust. And that is such an important facet that we need to look at. And I think in addition to that, while we index on AI, which is the way to go, and technology, I'm a big believer, because I believe AI will remove mediocrity. It will not remove jobs. It will just, strip out the mediocrity. And when it does, it gives us room to do other things. And when that room comes in, it should be about building relationships. So I think that is the thinking that one needs to, going back to that whole rigor of just, how salesmen used to be feet on street, marketeers will be like creating that one-to-one connection again.
Right. We have approached the end of our session. Looking ahead to the next decade, if you think that ecosystem is going to be the new dominant, in the market, what kind of new responsibilities will the CMO?
It's not new. I think I've been doing this for a long while. Like I said, maybe my CEO is a visionary or a market maker, whichever way you look at it. So I think, like I said, the role of the CMO will be that of a market maker, not a marketeer. So I think a lot of the partnership-based relationships will reside with the CMO. A lot of the AI initiative. So on one side, you will have the more technical things, which is a lot of the AI based work, which is going to look at some of the measurements, the processes, the efficiencies. But on the other side, a CMO will be looking a lot more at networks, will be looking at, and I think networks in different scales. So you can have global networks, you can have by location, you can have networks by type of businesses and verticals. You can have networks by different stakeholders in the ecosystem, like you said, startups, investors, governments, regulators, and things like that. Industry bodies itself. And I think it will also come with an understanding. CMOs will wind up having researchers as well. I'll tell you why. Because I feel not market research, but really ecosystem research. Because they will need to give to the ecosystem. If I'm working with a regulator, I need to give the regulator information in a certain way that is easily consumable to them. So I'm also, if you think of it, it's like pocket marketing or micro marketing to each of these different networks with their messaging and themes, where I'm hyper personalizing it from them, but from a human angle. So I think that duality is what I will need to sort of look at when we're doing it.
Great. Now, before we wrap, we'll do something lighter. I think this
Too
session
intense.
would have been
इतना
really
orchestration नहीं करना है. हाँ.
So I'll give you a few prompts and
Absolutely.
you answer in just one sentence.
Oh,
Okay.
rapid
So that's
fire
the
with
rule.
me.
That's the rule.
Are
One
you Karan
sentence.
Johar in me?
I don't want to be, but I think he's
Of course.
brought out a good format. So I
As
think
long
it's
as you give me a good hamper at it, I love it.
we have that. We have that. We have taken care of. So I'll start. The one ecosystem player people underestimate the most is
Zinnov.
great. Right. That's true. But I don't think people underestimate. I think they're the leaders, without a doubt. Now, the hardest part of ecosystem building is
Ego bashing.
okay. If ecosystems had a mascot, it would be
Very, very interesting question. An elephant. Because an elephant can dance.
great. The most okay, I think you're going to love this. The most overused buzzword in ecosystem conversations is
Currently GCC in my ecosystem. But apart from that, I'd say the buzzword would be trust. I'd say it's a buzzword when it's not put into action.
okay. The future of ecosystems in one word.
Humanity.
Great. So, Nitika, thank you so much for sharing such practical tips and such amazing insights on how to actually build the ecosystems. I think our audience is going to love this session because I don't think many people have covered this into such a depth when it comes, because this is the future. I think we all are taking a lot of lessons from this session. And to everyone watching, we have a lot to cover. We are not done. So stay tuned and keep watching. Thank you, Nitika.
Thank you so much, Rachita. Lovely to meet you.